Hello and welcome back to another video tutorial here at Geekatplay Studios. My name is Gary Miller and I've got a great project for us today. It's going to be organic modeling. And I was at a website a couple months ago and I saw this cool little character that this fellow created, and I thought, wow, that would be a perfect little cartoon character to make. And as now that I'm making tutorials for Geek at Play, I thought it would be a perfect model to create for an introduction to organic modeling tutorial. Well, unfortunately, I don't remember the site that I saw it on, so I can't go back and grab an image from it and get the permission from the creator of it. But I did remember enough that I could sketch my own version of it and bring it here into hexagon. Now, depending upon what it is that you're creating, if you're making something based off of an image, if you come over here to your Properties tab right next to your scene tree, you've got three grids here that Hexagon provides that helps get your bearing in your 3D world. And in addition to that, it allows you to assign a JPEG, a PNG, a bitmap, any sort of image to these grids so that you can always have in front of you your reference image. You can even put blueprints on here. So what I had done is I knew basically what the character looked like in my head, so I grabbed Photoshop and I created just a quick little sketch of him, um, so that I could assign it to my grid here and use that as a flow or as a basis as I started making my character. When I first made him, he was tall like this. He had legs, but as the project evolved, I thought, I think I like him better short and fat and squatty. I decided not to put legs on him and just put shoes on his feet, and made a little ball cap and put some hair on him. And all these things were done here in hexagon, and we're going to try to duplicate this fella as best we can. So I will leave the image attached to my grid. I'll disable the other ones. I don't need that. Actually, I'm going to assign that picture to the back grid. I don't want it on the front one. And we're going to set about creating this little man. Now, this is a tutorial on organic modeling. If you've never done organic modeling or don't really know what it is, essentially organic modeling is creating something that is organic. And as such, it's going to have it's going to be very rounded. It's going to resemble something organic, something that you'd find in nature, like a rock, a tree, a bird, a hand, um, as opposed to something that you would create in technical or architectural modeling, which deals with lots of 90-degree corners, sharp angles, something that you would make if you were duplicating, making a house, a building, apartment complex, that sort of thing. I guess you could even say, to some degree, depending upon how you are constructing it, if you were to make an automobile model, that you could also use organic modeling in doing that. In fact, over at DAZ 3D, they show several videos that a creator has made demonstrating hexagon, and one of the videos is a four-part video showing how he made this little car with rocket engines, and that is a form of organic modeling. So this is the little character we're going to create, and I'll go ahead and hide him and lock him because we don't need him now. Maybe we might resurrect him later for reference purposes. Now, we first start off with a primitive shape, and for the most part we're going to keep that primitive shape and just stretch it and mold it just like a sculptor does with a piece of clay. And you'd probably think I would start with a cone here to create this, because if you look at his body shape, it is for the most part like a cone. And while it makes sense to do it, I think functionality wise it's going to be easier if I use a cylinder. So I'm going to grab my primitive cylinder, and I think I'm going to I'll keep 6 sections, but I want 10 sections up here. I'm going to close off, I hit my close all button, and what that does is it puts a cap on the top and the bottom of the cylinder rather than leave it as a hollow tube. Now the reason I chose 10 instead of the default 8 is for this reason. Instead of 8 sections, or if I left it at 8 sections, hit close all, I'm going to have a problem beginning to shape my model right at the very beginning. And that is simply because of this. If you look at where the orientation of my axis is, the z-axis, it is pointing at the center of this, which is a line, a vertex, an edge. And my character is going to have a nose coming out of him, and I want to make the nose from a face and not an edge. So if I stayed with 8 sections, it would be difficult to make a nose out of here, because I would be using an edge. Now here's another reason why. If I selected, say, that one, I said, well, I'll make a nose out of that. Look at the orientation of my axis. I want my blue line going this way. I don't want it going that way. And because when I now go to use my sweep tool, hang on a second, let me add a little smoothing to it. When I use my sweep tool, if I want to go and make any adjustments to anything, again, look at the orientation. If I want to move this back or stretch it out to make it longer, well, look at it's going off at an angle. All right, well, I'll use this one. Well, it's going off at an angle too. I know, I'll use this arrow thing. Well, I'm guessing at making it straight. So that is why I'm using 10 points or 10 sections on my cylinder instead of 6. So we'll get rid of that guy. Come up here and click on my select faces. I guess I could stretch this out a little bit more. Now what I want to do is I want to create the nose from a face on this side because it's right in line with my z-axis. But I don't want to create my nose here because it's right at connected to the top of my head, and it wouldn't allow me to have much of a head if my nose came straight out of there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to grab this edge right here. I'm going to come up here to Edge Tools. I'm going to click on this middle one, and I'm just going to come up there, about there. It's all guesswork. I can always make lots of adjustments later. Now before I do anything, I want to add a little smoothness to my model. And now I'm going to create my sweep tool, use my sweep tool. Now his nose is considerably large, so I want to create several sections to it. I want to create 3 sections. The reason why I'm creating 3 rather than let me select that face, rather than just coming straight out is this very simple reason. Get my fingers on the right key of my keyboard. I want my nose to start off narrow here and then get fat and bulbousy as it comes out. I want it to taper down about here and here, and I want it to grow and stretch in this area. So by, let me undo, by creating several sections, it allows me the ability to taper it as it comes out from the head. I'll grab that edge here, hit my loop command. You can also do the same thing on your keyboard by hitting L, which is a neat little trick I learned from watching one of Vladimir's tutorials here using hexagon. I didn't know the keyboard had a hotkey for the loop, and it's the L key. So I will grab this little yellow box here. Oh, let me first back up and say I am using the universal manipulator, and that tool right there, it allows me to, these arrows allows me to move objects left, right, up and down, etc., towards the camera, away from the camera. These little boxes that are right next to the arrows, those allow me to scale, and it also gives me the rotate function, which are these little arcs right here, allows me to rotate. So I prefer using the universal manipulator. If yours looks like this, or like this, or like this, or nothing, then you want to make sure your manipulator is enabled by hitting this little ghost icon and use your universal manipulator. You can use whatever one you want, but for this tutorial, if you're trying to follow along, this is the one I'm using. So that's why if yours doesn't have these functions on it, clicking on universal manipulator will enable them. So I want to bring this in a little bit. I want it to grow out nice and fat and wide here. And then taper in a little bit up here. And I'm going to grab the front of his nose, bring it in. Now it looks like I'll have to stretch this out a little bit more. There we are. That's the shape I'm looking for. Let me scale down this front face here. Okay, that's pretty good. Now you see why I chose to use my edge tool here and make a second edge. Had I created the nose up here, it would have been straight in line with his head. I'll just stop right there and validate it. It would have been in line with his head, and it wouldn't have been able to give me kind of a little bit of a scalp on him. So that's why I chose to make my nose come out of a face on my cylinder a little bit below the top. So that's our fat guy. Now we need to bring him, stretch him down a little bit. Now we got to make him gain some weight. Let me loop that, bring that down a little bit, and bring this down a little bit more. Okay, we're going to come over here to our soft selection tool. Let me reduce this a little bit. Our soft selection tool is an indispensable tool for organic modeling. Now if you look at the points here, let me hide my manipulator. If you notice these points here, none of them are enabled. If I hit my soft selection, now you see they're illuminated in red. Even though I have this face selected, these red points indicate that faces that are adjoining this one are also selected based on the softness setting of this soft selection tool. Now what I want to do is I want to affect all of these polygons around here, because as I scale this bottom one up to be larger, I want this one, I want all these other ones to, in a gradual fashion, to also scale up. So I'm going to need to increase my radius. As you see, as I increase my radius, more of these points are selected. So let's try about there. And now I'm going to scale him up. And that's probably a little too much. I can come down a little bit. Stretch him down. Now I'm going to reduce the radius some more. And stretch him down. I'd say that's pretty good. Let me turn off my soft selection because I don't need everything else affected. I'm going to bring this one in just a little bit. There we are, the human ketchup bottle or bowling pin. That looks good. Let's see if I can flatten this bottom shape now. It's going to affect the whole thing. We'll leave it at that for now. And that's our little dude for right now. What I'm going to do is this little lightning bolt here. It tells me that my smoothing function is enabled. If I click on it, now you see that I have all these faces that weren't there previously. And all that simply tells me is that I have, what's the word I'm looking for? I have increased the resolution of my model. It's always easier to work when, let me undo. It's always easier to work on a model with as few polygons as possible, but I want a tighter resolution on this guy, so I'm going to click on that, and now I'm going to come up and click on smoothing one more time, and now I've got a nice smooth little guy I can do some more work on. There we are. Now I'm going to, let's see if I do that, if I click on that point, no, it won't work. I'm going to click on all these, select all these faces on top of his head. I'm going to bring it up just a little bit. And now I'm going to click on the yellow scaling tool in the middle and make it a little bit more rounded. And I like that. Let me enable my original guy. Ooh, he's tiny. Let me scale him up just to get an idea on where we are. The little fatty here is definitely going to need to be a little wider down at the bottom. Let me select him again. I will select these bottom faces, enable my soft selection function, tool, whatever it's called, and make him a little larger. Okay, I'm happy with that, and we're coming up to about 20 minutes here on this tutorial, so I'm going to stop it here. This will complete the first part of this tutorial. I know we didn't do much, but I needed to explain setting up the scene to be able to have a reference image assigned to your grids, and prattle on probably too long about organic modeling. So that's that for this first organic modeling tutorial. I hope you stick around and continue watching the rest of them, and I hope you learned something for this. So thanks for watching here at Geekatplay Studios. My name is Gary Miller. Have a good day.